application developers. Okay. How many of you run mobile businesses or mobile-related businesses? How many are making money on mobile right now? Okay. And how many want to know how to make money on mobile? Come on, the people who don't? Panelists to first introduce themselves, tell us a little about their businesses, and more importantly, tell us how they're making money on mobile. And then we'll try and very quickly move to the audience Q&A and get your questions answered. The other rule is, since you don't need to put your mobile off, but do please put it on silent mode so that there's no disturbance. We'll start with Ashay.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So I am the CTO at vSub.mobi. We is primarily an ad network, and we work with app developers to help them monetize their apps, both in terms of advertisement revenue and in terms of in-app purchases and post-download purchase by the end user. So primarily we believe that there are two sources of revenue streams that a developer can have. One from the end user and one from advertisement. And we try to work closely with developers, provide them tools and means to sort of monetize via both means.
How do you make money on mobile?
So basically, if an advertiser if we get to an ad campaign, we keep a certain percentage, which is generally in the ratio of 60-40 in favor of the developer. And similarly, we have a certain percentage when we try and buy subscriptions and pay-per-play sort of models with developers. There also we have a small percentage on the revenue that the end user pays. So if you make more money, we make more money. That's how we build a business.
Hi, I'm Abhinav. I am the CEO of a company called Spice Labs, which is into development casual applications, but we have a long history. Essentially, we started off with developing a platform for write once and deploy everywhere kind of a platform which will allow developers to develop applications so that you could put it across to various kinds of devices, different operating systems, different form factors, and so on and so forth. Subsequent to which, we actually pivoted to making an application store and creating our own bunch of applications which could be put onto the App Store. We ran the Idea App Store for some time. Then, during that time, we realized that there was a growing, size of OEM companies which were then coming with their own app stores and wanted apps on that. So we started to develop applications on each of these platforms. At a certain time, we narrowed down on the BlackBerry App Store because that was an app store which was still very virgin. There were not too many applications, and we thought that we were getting good amount of support from BlackBerry. And to the date, we continue to push a lot of our applications through the BlackBerry App Store. Recently, we have started to see a lot of traction on Nokia. We are trying to get deeper integration with them, so we make a decent amount of downloads on the Nokia App Store. And from around last year, we are starting to push a lot of applications onto Android as well as onto the iPhone, the iPhone ecosystem. So we have made decent amount of money. We have seen a very big high when BlackBerry was acceptable, much more acceptable than now in terms of monetization for advertisers. I agree with Ashay that there are two basic fundamental models of making money which we employ at Spice Labs as well. One is the end user, of course. The other is advertisement. But other than that, we have seen some other models as well where there are certain sponsored ads. You could go to a brand. The brand wants to create an ad and is willing to pay you for that. So it's an outsourced model. Or some brands may even say, if you can drive some downloads also, we could pay you per download. And the last is, of course, that there are certain, in the case of enterprise applications, you could, if you're driving license sales of certain enterprise products, you could actually start to make money as a percentage of the licenses that platform is selling. Though that number is much smaller, the bigger number is advertisement itself.
Is this audible? Give us some numbers. How many downloads? How much money are you making every day or every month?
So 52 million downloads is what we have done over the past few years, I think a couple of years. And from a money standpoint, on a great day we would be making like $5,000 in a day also. On a bad day, it could be really bad. That's how it works with advertisement, right? That's how it works with that. Hi, I'm Rajiv Kumar, founder of Rocket Talk. Rocket Talk has about 17 million users. We offer cloud-based social apps. So these are applications that range from the simple friend finder all the way to playing games and playing contests and actually having groups where you participate. And participation is via rich media, whether it's your voice or video or photos or a combination of those. So an example of what we do from a monetization point of view is what's happening right now in our system is a game Antakshari that a lot of us can probably relate to. It's sponsored by Nokia, so Nokia is actually paying us to run this game for 5 weeks. And people come in, they answer a few questions, and then they actually sing. They sing in their own voice. And to date, it's about 74,000 people that have actually played this game right now. And I was just browsing a little while ago. There were about 1,300 people active playing the game at this instant in time. So that is one example where people actually pay us, brands pay us. There have been other brands like Google, like YouTube itself. So the brands that have come in onto Rocket Talk have ranged from Channel V, the Star network, all the way to operators like Vodafone and Idea. They've actually paid us to run campaigns on their behalf into the Rocket Talk audience. Our users are a unique bunch of people. These are people that prefer using their mobile phones for access to the internet. So it's a hard bunch to find. It's in smaller cities and towns typically. But they get, once they come in, they're very engaged and they spend 20 to 25 minutes each time they come in. And these guys come in about 12 times a month on an average into the network. Did I answer all the things that you wanted me to?
Yeah, you want more numbers.
Okay, so numbers of users, 17 million. In terms of impressions, we are running about 1.6 billion page impressions per month. You want the revenue numbers now. Now, revenue numbers are a little harder to exactly say because there are a lot of brands involved. But take an example of a large brand, a large multinational brand. They would typically spend about $40,000 right now in a month on us. So $40,000 to $50,000 is a typical spend per month by a large brand. And at any point in time, we have a dozen brands. So maybe some of you can do the math and figure out the numbers. No, I think you did the math wrong. So it's not that much. 10 to 12.
I'll help you out by starting. So my name is Jonathan. I run innovation and business development for Vodafone India. I've been in India about 2 years nearly. Previously in Egypt, also with Vodafone. And in a previous life, used to run a online advertising, technology and sales business. So that is my reason. And we make some money out of mobile as well.
What have you observed about monetization of ads on the Vodafone platform and Vodafone app stores that it is? Any insights you want to share? Any numbers in terms of revenue and what the downloads?
So, I mean, there's a couple of numbers that I think are worthy of note. One is that if you look at the total application market in the world, obviously in smartphones, then the US and Europe is leading that wave. But if you look at free Java applications, India is by a long way the biggest market in the world, which represents a huge opportunity. And I think the other thing that we've observed is that, I think the whole question of monetization is quite interesting, right? So I think one of the things that we should get on and discuss is, is this the perfect model, right? Transaction or advertising. And indeed, for those of you that were there this morning, when Tommy was talking, and sort of with a note of caution, if you like, about applications and monetization, he of course glossed over the fact that attracting huge volumes of users implies a valuation which is a form of money, right? So I think there's the basic, how do you make money today, but there's also, and to my colleague on the right who will introduce himself in a minute, is also what is the implied valuation of the business that you've built, and I think that's an important point to note as well. We do have our own app store. It's not big. We do about 2 million downloads a month on that, but it is primarily focused on feature phone applications and primarily focused on feature phone applications for India. So we're relatively happy with that.
Hi, my name is Dave. I'm at Lightspeed Venture Partners. We're a global venture fund with offices in Silicon Valley, China, India, and Israel. We are investing out of a $700 million fund and have made about 10 investments in India over the last 4 years. And I've been an entrepreneur in mobile myself. I thought mobile had arrived in 1999 when I went up and down Sandal Road and raised money for my startup in the mobile enterprise space at that time. We sold in 2003, and I've been investing in mobile since then. In terms of monetization, I think there's two layers. One is we talk about how do you pay, and there's a constricted set of options when you think about how do you pay on mobile versus web. And then the second thing is who pays. And there are many, many different types of people who pay, whether it's mobile or web. Companies can pay per user per month. We've seen numbers $2 to $5 to $10 a month in lots of different types of mobile applications. We've seen companies pay to generate transactions for their restaurants. Let's say a Grubhub type company in the US, and you pay 15 to 20% of transaction value for that sort of lead generation. We have two mobile companies here in India. One is a company called OneAssist, which does mobile phone protection and insurance services. They replace your phone if you lose it for 11 to 1200 rupees a year premium that you pay them. And they just launched last month. We incubated them. And then there's a company called Aswela out of Bangalore that does location services, more traditional, through the operator, white label services. So we see lots of different models. I think there's two layers though, like I said. How do you pay and who pays? That's a couple of minutes answer. Or do you want me to give a one-sentence answer? No, go ahead. Okay. We definitely think investing in companies that are purely white labels with the operators is not an investable category right now. We think that companies that have their own direct-to-consumer distribution over the next several years have a better chance of unlimited upside. And in that space, we divide into two categories. One is apps and services that are consumer branded, and the second is enabling technologies. Very standard differentiation there. On the apps and services, we think there are two categories that will break out first on direct-to-consumer mobile. One is entertainment, which includes video, music, and gaming. And the second is communications, where we've seen companies like Rocket Talk and others in the market do reasonably well, or very well. And then I think in the future there will be verticalized applications in banking and financial services, education and healthcare that will come. But I think right now the market might be a bit small to go after that. And then enabling wise, there's advertising, payments, and location. And we've seen companies like VServe and others start off in India and do really well with several billion impressions a month. And there are others in that market. And payments, that's an area that I think a lot of us investors are looking for, that off-tech or non-carry related payment method, whether it's an Alipay, PayPal type method, or whether it's a Zong or Boku like carrier integration that comes around. But for that we need lower rev shares from the gentleman to my left.
If I could get one here. So, question for Akshay. I'm curious about, I think Jonathan mentioned Java has got the highest number of downloads. You're a company that has started with providing ad solutions for Java application developers, and now you've moved to smartphones. What is it that you're seeing in India in terms of trends on your network, and how does that compare with the rest of Southeast Asia?
In terms of unique user, it's not that skewed, but the usage-wise it is. Still, the number of feature phone devices is also increasing. The people who are coming and browsing is also increasing more than 10-12% month on month. So, so the feature phone market in terms of using devices is also growing, and Android devices are also growing significantly. In terms of Southeast Asia, Singapore is different. Singapore is a very iPhone market. Almost 90% odd is right now iPhone. Indonesia, BlackBerry penetration is slightly higher as compared to other markets. Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, again would be very similar to India. Malaysia slightly more on the smartphones, but the other three countries are surely very similar to India. So that's the rough trend.
What trend are you seeing in terms of eCPMs, in terms of rates? I saw there's a $5 fine.
Yeah, are you making $5? Are people in India making $5 eCPM, or are they making more? We have been over the last 1.5-2 years
that we're working with developers, consistently being able to give all our partners around $5 eCPM for the global inventory. Different markets, the rates differ, but most of the time developers have their apps which they deploy on different app stores, and you get downloads across the globe, and your inventory gets generated across the globe. And on an average, it's somewhere between $4 to $6 eCPM that we are able to deliver to our developer friends. And in India. Okay. So you think what would be the eCPM for the Indian inventory? That way, it would be about around $3. If you had only India inventory, it would be around $3. But generally, apps would, whatever app you made, there is an NRI crowd. You will be surprised to the extent of usage that you will generate for that app from outside India. I don't think you will make an app and that app is going to get downloaded only in India, and I don't think more than 60% of the inventory will be in India. You will get about 40% global inventory from any app that you do, and that sort of averages out your eCPM on the higher side. In terms of just giving you an understanding of some markets of advertising, say for India, if I take a cost per click sort of a number, it would be around 3 cents. The same number in countries like Malaysia and Thailand goes up to 10 cents average, and that same number in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico would go up to about 18 cents, and that number would go up to about 30 to 35 cents in South Africa. So, we as an ad network are focused more on emerging markets, primarily on Southeast Asia, India, Middle East, Africa, and Latin. These are the markets that we operate in. We don't go into the developed markets, and so it's spread. The different markets have different rates at which ads are getting sold presently.
In your case, Abhilash, the status has been primarily just the revenue coming from international markets, right? Or has there been any traction in India?
So I don't really recall the latest figures, but at a certain time we were looking at more than 70% of our revenues actually coming out of South Africa, US, UK, and Canada.
Why do you think the Indian market hasn't quite worked out?
I'm not saying it's not worked out. It's just that we have focused on the BlackBerry ecosystem, right? So the BlackBerry ecosystem, these are the stronger markets for BlackBerry. So the Indian market, so if you were to look at the 52 million downloads that we have been able to generate, so it would be around 10 to 15 million which should have been downloaded in India. Most of it would have been, the rest of it would have been downloaded in other geographies.
So the integration of advertising, I mean, what are your top, I mean, how have you done this in the sense, what ad networks are you using? If you were to recommend something to the audience here, what would you recommend in terms of integration of ad
So
networks?
essentially, I believe, mostly ad networks are very competitive and they offer nearly the same rates to you. You just have to figure out, with which you can work. For us, what we have done since we had a sort of a technology background and a decent enough team to work with, so we had created a sort of an ad aggregator inside ourselves, which is the aggregating ad aggregator. So essentially what we do is we work with Visa, we work with AdSonic, we work with InMobi, we work with Millennium Media. So multiple ad networks, and we try to sort of work with each of these guys. If there are some decent campaigns with them, so based on that we try to fix our traffic. We are able to sort of move our traffic very dynamically.
Okay. Rajiv, in your case, this team, have you worked, how have you integrated from an advertising perspective? Secondly, how do you get all these brands to come on board? Because many of the FMCG brands in India, for example, are a little skeptical about the interest, and that hasn't grown. So how do we get them interested in Dr. to begin with?
So what we tend to work with either directly with brands or through agencies, primarily through agencies. All of our brand campaigns come through agencies. We tend to take only branding campaigns. We do not take CPC typically. So far we have not done much of CPC at all. So it's really CPM directly, net CPM back to us. And the reason they get interested, like a company like Perfetti for their consumer branding, consumer brand, they get interested is again the reach. The reach into the consumer segment that we bring to them. Because we have these 17 million users, and the base is primarily the tier 2, tier 3 cities that they otherwise cannot reach easily. These are mobile internet users who are typically only mobile, and they are not able to reach them. And of course, it's a combination of what the agency learns from us, and then we go to them and we sell directly. We go with the agency and sell to them, and that's how they get interested in that.
So how big is your sales team? And can you tell us what a regular pitch to a brand marketer is like?
So our sales team is very, very small. It's a total of 2 people. And I think you know both the people that are there. It's total of 2, and one is more of a creative guy. He's more of a support person, and one is the main sales guy that goes out and pitches. And the pitch is typically just showing the numbers, showing the engagement. It's really about here is an app that is in the hands of these millions of users, and it is a media channel for these users. Users come in, they have fun, they do social discovery, they do social entertainment. And while they are entertained, they remain there for 20 to 25 minutes, and they do so many transactions, they view so many pages, and you will have a chance to reach them. And we typically try to remain away from display advertising. Display advertising for us is a means only. It's just one of the tools. We don't take display advertising campaigns typically. It is more of an engagement campaign that we take. So Antashri is a good example where the entire campaign is built around content creation and content sharing and content consumption. Most of our campaigns are like that, where it is in the context of something that the user is already doing. So for example, for Fanta, we did a campaign where they sent greeting cards. People were sending Holi greeting cards, but the Holi greeting cards were branded Fanta greeting cards. So you had to send Holi greeting cards anyway. They just happened to be Fanta greeting cards. So there was no extra thing that the user did. They were sending these anyway.
So what's your eCPM?
Net CPM to us comes out about $2.50, and we don't take CPC at all.
So effectively what you're saying is, and from what I'm hearing from all three of you, is that it's about scale. Because from an advertiser perspective, there isn't much money in terms of, at least in terms of CPM in the market.
So the campaign, if we translate it back into how many impressions we have to serve, it would be about $2.50 net to us.
Okay.
And this is only India. Our inventory is only India, monetization is only India.
So Jonathan, the other means of monetization is transactions. How is that playing out in terms of what you've recently launched? I think in terms of third-party billing through your network.
So quickly on advertising, just to finish off, I don't think the issue in India is scale or whatever else. I think it's quality of sales and quality of buying that is the issue in India today. So let me clarify that point.
Could you elaborate on that?
So if you look at the growth of internet, and there is some interrelatedness to your other question. So if you look at the growth of internet advertising in the rest of the world on fixed, in the late 90s through to today, that took an awful lot of heavy lifting sales, right? It took you're taking agencies on a journey. Agencies are inherently lazy. If there's a short bit with respect to any agencies in the audience, but they don't have enough time to experiment too much, right? So you need to give them easy models. The kind of experimental advertising first forays that Rajiv just talked about are the kind of, and I think the key point, and Rajiv probably elaborate, is that once if you've got a campaign that works, then next year's budget is 10x what it was this year. And we're about at that stage in India today. So I think writing off or worrying too much about CPMs, CPCs or whatever else is wrong. And I think inventory is not an issue. But I think quality of sales is an issue. And we're suffering a little bit from fast attempts to monetize without quality sales. So, and I know it's a little controversial, but this is bound to be a little controversial. On your point on transaction, and directly related, if there is no closed-loop transaction, then digital advertising is only going to be brand advertising. What I mean by that is, unless I can see an ad, click on the ad, find out more, and then buy, then the whole thing doesn't really work. Right? So the transactional model is fundamentally important to the growth of advertising, and that's a symbiotic relation or a virtuous circle. So what we have done actually is recognizing this is we've dramatically changed the revenue share in favor of developers. And the reason we've done that is not completely altruistic, because actually, unless I get developers in India to be able to make money, there will be no developers in India. And unless I have developers in India that can create services that are India relevant, then I can't grow the penetration of internet in India beyond the English-speaking and smartphone-owning population. So advertising and transaction are inherently interlinked. The scale of that business, to give you a sense, we've gone from almost zero in that business. We're now 6 weeks into that with only relatively few partners, and it is already in the tens of crores revenue per month. So, that's the appetite. The other key point, and I'm sorry to bang on, but the other key point in India is people are shifting. They have not grown up with free internet. Okay? They've grown up with mobile services that they pay for, like ringback phones or whatever else. So their propensity to pay at the right price point for access to great services is much higher than it is in the rest of the world. And India should not go, in my view, with free only as a model. I think transactional is very interesting. And to the point which Akshay does, we've done two things. So not only can Akshay's service allow advertising to come into an application, but we also have the ability to then, on the third opening of that application, so the application is now charged. If you want to continue, then you click to buy it. So just be careful about writing off transactions because it hasn't worked elsewhere in my view.
Just to add a question to that, just curious about, and this is again controversial, whether the transactional part of the business, like you said, India has a propensity to pay on mobile. So I think it's more of a propensity to charge on mobile than to pay, the way it's turned out. Is that going to be a situation where you'll again have complaints and from customers about, because this is now moving out of your ecosystem to third-party development? How do you address that?
So absolutely, the entire industry in India is moving from a process of push to a process of pull. And no longer can you rely on distribution through operators or other partners as a business model. You have to rely on creating a service that is attractive enough, relevant enough, and contextual enough that customers want to go and consume it. If you've done that, and that is the business model, right, anywhere in the world, unless you do that, it's a waste of time. Okay, so, and when I said in the morning that actually, what the interesting outtake from what look at the opportunity for developers in India today, and Akshay has talked about that, the opportunity is to develop a relationship on a feature phone with consumers, such that when they inevitably transition to an Android device in the next 1, 2, 3 years, they will seek out your service. If you don't do that and you wait until there are smartphones or you only build the smartphones, then you're competing on the Play Store with about 1 million app developers who are way better than most of you guys, with respect, right? Who've had world-class UX and world-class VC backing, who have created a fantastic user experience. Don't compete in that space. Compete now in a more easy to compete in environment, and get people to invest in a relationship with your brand such that they seek you out later.
Dave, would you invest in a feature phone app right now in India?
We would, as long as they have world-class ambitions on smartphones in the future. I think there are companies that we've seen that say we are completely focused on feature phones, we're the best, and that's all we're going to do, and I see that market as limited in terms of monetization. But I think if you look at where the market's going, if you look at the 700,000 to 800,000 smartphones a month shipped in India right now, out of the 15 to 16 million devices that are shipped per month in India, that percentage has doubled from about a year ago. And I think the unique smartphone app users in India, my guess is that number is around 7, 8 million right now. It's reasonably small. I think that number gets to 20 million by December of this year, 50, 60 million by December of next year. So that number is going to expand pretty fast. And on the mobile website, my estimate was 60 million. I was talking to Jonathan, he said his estimate is about 100 million mobile web users in India today per month. That number, I think, would go to 100 million by December and 200 to 250 by end of next year. So if you think of those numbers, I think the opportunity right now is to focus on product market fit, build something that's a fantastic experience, keep the burn low if you're a developer or a startup. Don't spend tons of money on customer acquisition. Just build something that's useful, that's engaging, that keeps people coming back. And then in a year and a half, when the market really reaches scale, then you can start really going nuts on customer acquisition. But before that, it's kind of a bit crazy, I think, right now to spend on that.
Is there a mobile apps versus mobile web debate that is worth having, or you think not? And which way would you lean?
My advice to the extent anybody wants to take it to developers is, if you want to go feature phone, go mobile web. If you want to go smartphone, go Android.
Okay. And where do you stand in terms of monetization and advertising versus transactions? What do you see? Where do you see the market going?
So I don't think that should be a key focus right now. Maybe in a year from now. And I think if you look at the models in the West, to the extent that it's all predictive about what's going to happen here, and they're usually not. It's not advertising that's making people money. It's clearly not. It's in-app transactions. It's paying for an app in some cases. It's subscriptions in some cases, but certainly not advertising. Advertising pays some bills.
Okay. You had a point to make.
So the point that I was making was to the point that Jonathan was saying that work and build an app for a feature phone so that when the consumer actually shifts to the smartphone, then that consumer will follow. So just wanted to give an example that we have been seeing. So when we started off, right, we saw the BlackBerry ecosystem as a low-hanging fruit because there were not too many applications, and whatever applications were there, they were very enterprise-focused. Few casual gaming, few applications that are like consumer applications, right? So then the BlackBerry ecosystem has been going down steadily, right? But the consumers of our app have gone back to us and given us feedback that why don't you now put your app onto the iPhone or onto the Android? And they have been very quick to pick it up. So now we are seeing some very, very healthy numbers on Android, not because we have been really great in terms of putting our app up there on the App Store and easy discoverability, but for the reason that the consumers who were using us on BlackBerry and liked us on BlackBerry, when they moved on to Android, they are seeking us out, they are finding our app, and they are using the app already, they're downloading the app and using it. Another thing that we have done, while we have relied on the pull of the app also, is that we have gone and used the Facebook as a distribution mechanism. So we have put a sort of an application which is tied into our app on the device on Facebook and ensure that the consumer is virally spreading the word for us across users across app stores and not just restricting us to a few app stores.
So, question for Akshay. Dave just said that advertising won't pay the bills. It will pay your bills, but what about the guys out there? Will it pay the bills?
So there will be differences in which the way in which app developers will monetize in different geographies. What works in the US, what works in the Western Europe, I don't believe will work everywhere. That does not mean that advertising will work. But if you're thinking that the way things have worked out in the West, the mobile ecosystem in other parts of the world is going to follow suit. I don't believe that. There are developers who are making $2,000 to $3,000 from us a day with about 20 or 30 apps which they have, a mix of 20 or 30 apps, and it's just a few. It's just the starting of the whole thing, and I believe it can grow substantially from here. So I believe each service, each app is unique as such. If you're looking at entertainment as a category, in the emerging countries or not so developed countries, too complicated a gameplay or role-playing games and in-app sword purchases and this, I don't think consumers get that easily. People like to have a little bit more casual, a semi-involved experience. They're not hardcore gamers. That's not a culture in most of these countries. They like casual gaming, and for that, advertisement I think is the best bet in which it will work out. If you're looking at communication apps, so there are basically three types of apps. It's entertainment, it's communication, it's information. Communication is all the social media and stuff like that. If you're looking at communication apps, there each communication app will have to find its own revenue model. It will not be a generic revenue model. Like for example, Rocket will have to have its own revenue model and what fits into that whole user experience well as such. And information, I think information could go well with a mix of advertising and then say entertainment again, try and buy a subscription or a pay for play. That sort of models will work better in these geographies rather than some complicated gameplay in which you're pushing users to get some power up and stuff like that. I don't think that is going to work that well, at least for the next 10, 12 years in these markets. There are not so avid gamers per se. Not that volume of avid gamers is not going to happen in these markets. I don't see that at all.
We need some help.
I think the path you're going down in terms of talking about gaming and how there's a business model for that versus other things is the right way to talk about this. Is that we can't talk about what is the monetization model for mobile. That's like saying what's the monetization model for the web. That just is too broad a way to think about this. So I think if you think about what's happened on the mobile app stores around the world, gaming is 60-70% of what's being downloaded out there, right? That's where money is being made. How are they making money? Certainly not through pure advertising. They're trying it also, but they've been making it through these other methods. The other way to think about this in India at least is that the whole advertising market in India is about $350 million a year, of which the run rate right now in mobile advertising is about 10% of that. It's a tiny market. So when we talk about, I'm sorry?
10% is a lot because internet took a while to get it. I don't think internet.
No,
mobile and internet combined would be 10% right now.
No, interactive sorry, may I misstated. Interactive advertising is 350 million, of which 10% is mobile. And when you think about that, that's a small market. So when we think about eCPMs and ask all these questions, it's an interesting question, but the sell-through rates on most of the publishers out there and I don't know your specifics, are low. 10%, 15%. Yahoo on a global basis has a 35% sell-through rate. The rest is remnant and really, really low CPMs. So I think we need to be, what we're talking about here. Maybe for branded sales or for developer ad sales, we're talking about $3, $6, $5, but the rest is remnant. This is what AdMob did when they started, right? They started out selling remnant inventory at 10 cents, 20 cents CPMs, really, really, really rock bottom prices. And that's where most of the market is today. And I think we need to differentiate between what's sold versus what is a run of networks. And they're very, very different beasts.
So, Rajiv, does advertising pay your bills, or guys like VCs like Dave who pay your bills?
Right now it's VCs that pay the bills, but that's because we are still in the very early stages of monetization. But advertisement has started paying a large part of our bills, very large part of our bills. But we've also started running experiments on user monetization, and that's going back to in-app purchases. Very simple stuff is what we have started doing. We have this program of a sponsored user where India is a very aspirational society, and most of our users come from tier 2, tier 3 towns and cities, and people want to get on top. So in any search, they want to show up on top, or inside a community, they want to show on top. So just that very simple program, when we ran this experiment, we had this, our health center was flooded. Our health center got flooded and said, we want to pay. And the payment was not, it was not humongous, but it was not small either. It was 500 rupees for a week you wanted to get placed, and 2,000 rupees for a month. So that was the sort of the benchmark. And we had hundreds of these users actually make a trip down to the local SBI, deposit money in a bank account. People were willing to do that. And these are thousands of people, not hundreds, but thousands of people that actually did that. So this was an experiment. It's hard to scale up by sending people to a SBI and do that. So now we have signed up with Jonathan, and hopefully that will become a little better coming through operators like Vodafone. So that was, I think in time we see that as being a greater part of our bills. If we fast forward 12 to 18 months, that may pay a greater part of our bills compared to advertising.
Any questions? Okay.
So just to sort of sum our viewpoint on ads and transactions. So in the West, I think it is 90% odd would be transaction and 10-15% would be advertisement. We believe in the emerging world, emerging markets, it would be about a 50-50 mix. So I'm not saying that advertisement is going to be the run-off thing, but you need to balance out your revenue streams, 50% transaction and 50% advertisement. That's how we see it.
Okay. First question goes to Nalan because he had many and we began. So could we get mic? No problem. I don't have answers to this.
I have one question for Abhinav and one for Ashir. Abhinav, I mean, like, I was asking you that how many programmers, or what is the size of your workforce and its division amongst programmers, marketing people, etc., to get your best case $5,000 a day advertising revenue? Okay, that's the question, and after that I'll ask Ashir the question.
So essentially, the product that is doing great for us, the product that we are working on, the focus, I believe, it takes around a team of around 25, which is focused on this. And if you were to take a mix of developers, quality guys, so maybe there will be 2 product people, there will be around 15 developers, graphic designers, quality assurance people, and the rest will be like there will be some admin guys, but mostly this would be the mix.
Okay. Ashir, okay, thanks a lot. Ashir, like roughly how much of your inventory goes unsold, or because I have some experience putting ads in my app, and I have seen that many times, in spite of the optimistic things, most of the highest ones promise you a eCPM of $1 or $1.25. So, I mean, listening to your eCPMs at $4 in India and $5-6 abroad, it sounds really amazing to me. the second thing, yeah. So,
let me start. So, what we have is a slightly different ad format. What we do primarily is to have a full screen launch ad and a full screen exit ad. So when somebody launches a game, we show a full screen interstitial ad on a feature phone having a left soft key, right soft key interaction, which is more native UI. And on exit, again, we show a full screen ad. And we ideally ask developers for gaming apps not to have ads in between. And this ad format is what generally gives the high CPA. That's one part. Anything you asked me there?
And like how much of your inventory goes unsold? Like if I were to publish an ad, then
so we provide free mediation. So if you would look at how ad networks work or how ad aggregation happens, is different networks will have different campaigns at different times. It will not be that all networks will have all campaigns and stuff like that. So ideally, as a developer, you need to have some means of pulling ads from as many networks as possible. So what we provide to our developers is a free mediation. So once you've used that tool and aggregate, you sort of ad-enabled your app, if we are not able to fill, you can specify the network that you would like to work with. We would go fetch ads from those networks and show it. So using so for in India, our own fill rate is around 70%. And we are able to take that to 90% by aggregating it across other networks. And the aggregation, the model we do is you sign up with any ad network, you get some publisher ID code which you put in on my dashboard, and you would pull ads and you would see statistics from there and you would get your revenues from there. So a single point of integration that allows you to pull ads from across multiple networks. So your fill rate can go up to 80 to 90%. Depending on different geographies. There are some geographies where you will not get fill rate. If somebody has downloaded your app in Sudan and is going to open the app, they're not going to get a fill rate from any network per se. But on an average, we are able to deliver around somewhere between 7 to 80% fill rate globally using mediation.
Great. Thanks a lot, Ashok.
Thanks, guys. So the question for Jonathan, my interest was piqued when you mentioned that your new transactional product has already done so well in a matter of short time. Is it because A, it's performance-driven advertising, so it's more measurable and more transparent? So the transaction is a transaction, and it's very hard to measure brand engagement for a big brand advertiser. Is it that the advertiser itself is different in selling products with a call to action, so hence it's a different class of product? So what kind of products work well in transactional mobile advertising? Because it seems like those are what would do well in m-commerce going forward as well, right?
Yeah, so you may have slightly misinterpreted the model. The model is basically if you're an app developer and you want to create in-app purchase, for example, you can come to me and use my billing API to conduct that purchase. So that business today is entirely driven by mobile commerce and digital goods. I agree with you, which is kind of why I say that we need to fix the M and e-commerce issue in the country, which is that when that becomes a mainstream activity, and the limitation of that
for hard goods and other
goods, then we are flying as an industry, and that is the single biggest problem, in my view, to the uptake of a successful internet economy in India. And actually, fixing that is also relatively straightforward, I think.
How did I fix it?
Because it's the model that everyone else in the world uses.
Okay. Just to add to that, when we say we need to prove that hard goods can be sold on mobile, I would actually say that there's an interim step that we need to make sure that apps can be sold on mobile, including on AdMob when it started several years ago, and in Mobi when it started a few years ago. Initially, 80-90% of the campaigns were developer campaigns. In other words, developers were paying for downloads. Yeah, and they were paying for downloads. The developer is a small entity, few people, cash strapped. You're not going to pay for anything unless you know that your customer is worth more than that. Customer acquisition cost is less than customer lifetime value. How do you know what customer lifetime value is? Because you've been out there, you've figured out what rate you'll
buy in-app purchases and other things. So it's kind of a circular argument in some sense, but the initial customers are endemic advertisers. They're not brands, they're not going to be anything else, they're going to be app developers. And that is not possible in India today because 70% goes to the operators, other than for Vodafone. And you're not making enough money to invest in the product or to market the product. And the DNA doesn't exist for many of these companies because they've been serving operators, not the consumer.
Interestingly, Nokia, which until recently on their OB store used to map a $1 product to ₹25 and a $3 price point to ₹75, recently they dropped their price point so that something which you marked as $1 internationally will sell for ₹5 in India. So, if the people are paying ₹5 per sale for something which you are selling for $1 globally, it's virtually impossible to actually give the person technical support if he says that I've downloaded it on a Nokia 500 handset and it's not working, its sound is giving problems. Just a comment I'm sharing to add to your thing about customer acquisition cost and justifying it and the DNA and so on. Okay.
The question, my name is Pankaj. Question, Dave, I'm just taking your logic forward. Your view on 350 million is the interactive advertising, 10% of that is currently going into mobile. But Rajiv says that currently VCs are really paying the bill. So I consult with some companies. So if those companies came to you with an advertising model, a proposed advertising model which says my company will grow based on number of consumers, you're from the investment community. So you would continue to invest in these companies under the understanding and hope that advertising revenues will grow significantly from where we are to make those companies valuable enough to you and to all of us. It depends on the company, but I certainly believe the advertising market will grow. So I understand that number is going to grow. The mobile percentage of that hopefully will grow as well. So you see that being significant. I'm just taking Rajiv's company, strong consumer base already, and would they hope to get a significant amount of their revenues coming forward? I ask this question because many people are building their models based on that, purely on advertising. One instance, he has advertising, but he also has a mixed model. Let's take an advertising model. Advertising only model is where you see that. You see that on radio, you see that on free-to-air TV, you see that on newspapers, on apps, or even that's on free and apps. Some apps. But I think I would, at least on mobile, I'd love to see more than just a bet on advertising. I'd love to see other revenue streams as well. Subscriptions in apps, other things. Not necessarily possible to do all that today in India, across the board, across all operators, all devices, but it's heading in that direction.
I have a question to left side of the panel, like Rajiv, Jonathan, and Dave. And the question is App Story is primarily about has been about OEM, like handset driven, the whole story, iPhone, Android, and all. And we never been made some definitive headway in telco. The part of the problem is because the plain vanilla self-service integration with Vodafone or Airtel for that matter doesn't solve the discovery problem for a developer because there are still 50 applications on the desk. If an operator will not do a kind of a strategic promotion for me unless I go white label, and then they will not fund the company because it's white label. So how do we kind of break that thing?
So that really is the heart of the debate, I think, today, right? So my answer to that is, if I give you enough money, and there is enough advertising inventory, which there is, then you should be able to market your service direct to consumer, right? And that's the key piece is that you haven't been able to do that before for the reasons that we've discussed. And I think the other point is that Rocket Talk scales because Rocket Talk is a great service that user gets user. And that is how that business works, right? They do not, as far as I'm aware, market the service, right? They have a point of distribution, but it's a pull. We're in a pull world, right? We are no longer in a push world. I can't, I've lived in India long enough and with the VAD community who are, dangerously obsessed with the, getting traction for distribution. But, and arguably, people lament the revenue share, but really if you break the revenue share out into billing, where I have a cost of money into my system, right, which is fairly material. I have 1.3 million people in a geographically expanded country. The cost of money and license and tax for me is quite high, right? So I'm offering billing at a very low margin to me relatively. But what I'm doing is saying your distribution is up to you. In the old model, you used to come to me because you wanted both billing integration, because it's the absolute best use case billing integration, but you also wanted distribution. So I don't think it's unreasonable that I was taking a higher revenue share at that point. What I'm saying is we will continue to push some of those services, white label, but we expect the community that's represented here to start building services that customers want and that they can market to customers directly through the means that we've discussed, which is mobile advertising. And that's the dead point, right, which is that the growth of advertising is largely driven by, new businesses that want to get users. And that's you guys, right? It's not Coca-Cola and Pepsi. They are late entrants in digital marketing, and they still really don't know what to do with it. The bulk of advertising on the web today, in established markets, is still transactional, right? And the bulk of spend is still transactional. So you have to be in that mindset.
There's a question in the back there. Hi, this question is for Jonathan. Wanted to know what is your percentage of off-deck versus on-deck mobile traffic?
Mobile traffic, about 98% off-deck.
And is that the reason why the DTC model has come up?
No. The reason that the DTC model has come up is three reasons, really. Firstly, for the reasons I've said, that unless you guys can develop applications and services that are locally relevant in India, preferably in different languages and regional content and services, we can't penetrate further internet in the country, because at the moment it's only available to people that speak English to a large extent. The one exception of a few sites or services like Newshunt, for example, which provides vernacular content. The other reason I've done that is because I have the benefit of hindsight, okay? And if I look at my colleagues in the States and in Europe, they refused or didn't want to participate in that model, and consequently everybody's credit card is with Google or with Apple. Right? So they are carriers that are providing access to the internet, which trends to a lower and lower cost, but they're not participatory in the broader business model. So it's in my interest to be a participant in that business model. And those are really the primary two reasons, and I guess it's a degree of wanting to grow the country's ecosystem genuinely, but it's also a degree of business opportunity for us.
Right. I mean, so far we see that most of the applications and web services that we see are dependent much on the operator promotions. And with D2C model, you completely washed your hands off marketing side. How do you see application developers who would have not much of marketing dollars with them tend and get traction there without any participation from Vodafone support?
I'm not saying I'm washing my hands. What I'm saying is that the trend is, right, and is that some services that we created collectively, customers didn't want, right? But they only succeeded because we kept pushing them to customers. We're now in a world where customers want to find stuff. It's a meritocracy. If you are rated 5 stars and you have 10 million downloads, you're at the top of the App Store. And that is what you need to shoot for. There is no other model, in my view. And that is a call out to us as an industry to cease being, relying on push marketing and rely only on the quality of the experience and the relevance of the experience. And that is the biggest challenge facing India today. Because ideas are not short in supply, but fantastic user experience and design and intuitiveness is something that we're learning in the country today, in my view.
All right, thank you.
Do you have any more questions? Which part of your question should I comment on?
question was more along the lines of the marketing of the app. How do you market these apps? So on our side, the way we have gone about doing it, obviously as a cash-strapped, scrappy startup, is we've tried to seed the various communities that already exist. So we went out 2.5 years ago and we started finding places where people went in, and they were already going in for either content or for pretty much for content, primarily for content that was available. It could be poetry as a content, it could have been songs as a content, it could be wallpapers as a content. So we started seeding it in, and that seeding was our marketing effort, and that marketing effort cost us a couple of interns, really. It wasn't a huge amount of cost for us. We didn't pay anybody to do it. In some cases, we had to pay like $100 fee for a whole month to keep it there, because once people figured out somebody's willing to pay, they started charging us a little bit of money. And that's how the marketing effort started. And then we obviously went to operators to some degree, we went to OEMs, we got ourselves preloaded, and that gave us some advantage as well. We were ahead of the others in that case. But once you reach the critical mass, it's really the virality that has to be made to work. In our kind of case, it is the virality. If the virality doesn't exist, we cannot grow. There is no other way to grow. We can't keep acquiring newer and newer users. It just won't scale for us. So it is now the viral element that goes to work now more for us than the simple customer acquisition of going out and asking people to come and join the system. So we don't spend as much money asking people to join the system. It is people asking their friends, their people that are known to them through their address books that come in virally.
What does it take to get preloaded? And maybe both you and Abhinav can answer that. What does it take to get preloaded? Apart from being a spice company and spice helps.
Well, initially, 2 years ago, it was the differentiation. So the OEMs that were there, starting with LG was the first one we did it with, then we went to Samsung, Micromax, many of them. And it was initially the differentiation that we brought in, that there's something different about this application because it had the rich media element, it had the communication element, and it had the entertainment. Those were the three anchor points. So there was pretty much the differentiation that it brought to their device. But now the world seems to have changed, and now the preload in our metrics now is not one of the highest producing in terms of traction for us. So we are not really insisting on preload. We will take it where we are able to convince them, but we are able to get much better traction from other sources rather than preload.
Have you paid for preload?
Not even one.
Can we get an answer? Okay. I'll answer both of them together.
What are the
other ways?
Other ways of what I was describing, where there are so many sites. There are more than 250 sites. If you look around, you can do some research. You'll find them where people already go, and you have to just plant your application there. Free. Most of it is free, or sometimes they'll charge you a little bit of money, not too much. It's not on a per download basis. You've got to discover those though.
Do you keep a list that you can share with everyone here?
I'll have to check with my marketing guys whether they're willing to share that. It's a lot of IP for the company.
Just to interject at that point, I sent a tweet this morning or this afternoon when I was meeting lots of voice people that were looking at distribution and news, and it occurred to me that actually this concept of affiliate, which is a massive driver of discovery in the rest of the world, is new to us here in India, right? And that's exactly what you're saying, which is that if you link to me, I'll link to you, right? And that is a fundamentally important driver of free, mutual beneficial discovery and distribution of applications.
Yes. So I'm just adding to the point around what it takes to distribute. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Rajiv that if you are differentiated, then obviously the OEM will be more than happy to sort of include you in his bunch of applications. Will go pre-embedded. But the point that you made that pre-embedding is not a huge thing. I personally believe that if you have a pre-embedded link on the phone, the usage is nearly automatic as long as there is some value. A few trials will for surely happen. So I'll give you an example, right? We used to put a VAT link onto our devices, and for those who don't know, we also run a significantly large devices business in this country, as well as in 4 other countries where we sell close to 1.5 million devices. So So on these devices, we used to just put a link, a web link, which really did not do anything tremendous, back 3 years back. And we then really enabled the service. There were a lot of handsets already out in the market which had this link, and we started to see traction. And we have close to, a 20 million page view kind of a thing, just on that web link which we had there. And, you're right, there have been instances when developers have come and, they have paid us, rather we have asked for them to pay for the applications that we pre-embed. Yes, that is a practice which does happen.
Just to add to that, I think, I would really encourage everybody to think big, not as to what the market is today, but think about what's going to be in a few years. Because you're going to be developing, hopefully, and you have the passion for your business that you want to be around for several years. So think about in India in a few years where you've got 400-500 million people accessible on one platform for the first time ever. Right? Think about businesses that succeed in that are 100-200 million uniques a month. That's the scale that we're thinking about right now. Most companies in India, other than maybe Facebook in India, have not broken through the 15 to 20 million monthly uniques, and that is only a few companies, including Rocket Talk at that level. Most companies are well below that. That's subscale for most advertising and most other things. So think about businesses that are 100-200 million unique visitors a month in a few years' time, and think about what will get you there. It won't be, and I agree with the panel here, it won't be pre-embeds, etc. That is increasingly a smaller part of success for anybody. And that's actually, you have to think about how much lift you'll get from that relative to the amount of effort that it takes to get pre-embedded. This is like, setting up OEMs, figuring out all sorts of other issues. It just takes forever as a business development cycle. I personally believe it's not worth the time right now. Focus on the product, get it right, get product market fit, and then you can scale after that.
I have a few questions for almost all of you. I say, is BlackBerry dead? Because it's a pain to develop for 5 platforms. Now with Windows, BlackBerry, iPhone, it becomes then, people talk of cross-platform. It doesn't really work if you want to do certain things. You have to go native, and then you can't really develop. BlackBerry, I can't use the word, but it's difficult to develop an application. But it's not meant for app development. It's not like Android or iPhone where you develop the app at work. So I wanted to ask you, is it really dying in terms of
India?
Yeah.
In India, you can get away without developing on BlackBerry
Because
the phones are there. The phones are there. The users are there.
Correct.
But the user will have another phone.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. But a lot of people do have BlackBerries, unfortunately.
Yeah, they will have BlackBerry. It's meant for email and BBM, and that's all it is meant for. They will have good data usage for BBM and mail, but they will have their app on another smartphone that they will carry, where they will consume apps and
probably on an Android.
Either it could be a tablet,
right?
It could be a tablet or another phone that person is having.
Correct.
The short answer is develop for Java, have a roadmap for develop at the same time for Android, and don't worry about anything else.
No, because we are mainly into Android because it gives us a lot of things. Like, for example, we have got an app which actually measures your distance when you travel, and then auto. It tells you whether the meter is right. So, that is very difficult to do on these platforms. The second thing I wanted to, Vodafone should use this muscle with Google to make them bring Devanagari into Android, which is still not there. And you said we have to, the local language. Devanagari, the script. The script is still not there till iTunes sandwich, and that too on the browser. They don't have it. So
my understanding of the roadmap for Google is that will come. And I think that they can't reach the level of ambition that they have on Android unless they do that. So I think
like to develop apps, local apps. Yeah. You can't develop them on Android.
What is the app that today to consumers?
We have location-based travel apps, like
broadly in the market. Is there enough content in the market to consume on Hindi right now, or any other data?
See, for us, even if we take Mumbai as a market, we know that some apps are like 3-4 million. Okay, and you can get that because, like for example, 70 million people travel on the train every day. So I'm looking at part of that.
I have to agree, there's demand for this.
Right.
I haven't seen enough apps. Newshunt is one.
No, we have a train app which is location-based, and it tells you the stations, it tells you your trip, everything.
and it does very well. But because we can't, bring it to Devanagari, like you said, that is a target you have to attack. And the other point I was coming to, when you say ads, are you saying, you talk to CPM and are you including the location-based ads also? Because I think that's a different market.
I think location-based ads, if you look at, and maybe you will have some better numbers on that. We see there's a few companies in India. The bigger ad networks, as far as I can tell, are not really hyper-local enabling ads. There's one company called Adnia that's doing that in India. And it's a smaller company right now. So my guess is as a percentage of the impressions in India, it's almost close to single-digit percentage, I'm guessing.
I know, but I think that market is big if it's done properly.
The cost of acquiring those advertisers, the retail advertiser, or aggregating those retail advertisers at present day is very high. Right. So if I have to aggregate 2,000 such retailers to advertise and spend, say, 10 lakh rupees as a collective, it's much easier to go to a Procter and Gamble and get 10 lakhs out of them. Much easier to get that spend there today. So, as more retail chains start happening, like a McDonald's, if those start happening, there would be some of the local advertising that we're looking at. Some of the deal size or those aggregators are coming into the picture. So there are some aggregation happening of deals which is right now on the internet. But it's still a while that location-based advertising will become substantial amount as such. So at least a year minimum, to see some traction in that space.
Do you think it is the deal side? And I think the local side players like Just Dial and Arsenal are far better positioned to grab the location advertising space.
So, see, technically location-based advertising is very complicated. If you are looking at a person, so if you are looking at a moving person, okay, impulsive purchases are better. Just Dial and those type of things do well when I know that his home is here and his office is here. I know those locations. Then Just Dial sort of an information will be better. That doesn't need to know I am right now in Delhi or right now here. That will be more impulse-driven advertising. If you want, you can discuss this offline. But if I know his home and I know his office, then Just Dial is a better bank of data to deal with. But if he's a moving person, then it's better impulsive purchases like abhi ye yahan pe mil raha hai, sort of a deal with kickoff. So it will be different. It's still too early days and there are a lot of things that are going to happen in that space. Overall, Nikhil has been probing me to give some numbers on unique users, so I'm going to do that. We have in terms of for a single app, I think 15 million would also be on the very higher side. It would be on the very higher side. I don't think that a single app would have that many active users right now. I see a lot of copycat Western apps out here today. Not sure how many people really get. You have a niche audience for each of those type of services. Unless you're really getting into local content where you can get to a far much larger reach. But I don't think, my understanding, some 10 odd million would also be great. I don't think there would be apps which have 15 million active users. There would be downloads for sure, but active users I don't think so. Some apps, if you consider Opera UC browser as app, Opera Mini and UC browser as app, then they would have much. The browser apps would have much. I think UC browser is sitting out there. I think they have done a lot of extremely good exchange programs and really grown their base purely on link exchange programs. And
I think the Opera numbers, my best guess is the Opera numbers are around somewhere between 25 and 40 million in India. 40% of the market.
But they spend to acquire in different forms. in terms of just organic growth or non-spend growth, UC Browser is a better example. And I think they would have. Pardon?
Have taken off in India. Any numbers from you? Just out of interest, because this is an inspiring story for the rest of the gang, right? So you went from almost zero in India a year ago to where are you today?
I think we launched our international version for UC Browser since 2009, and right now the active users is around 30 million. Yeah, and I think even the growth rate is still very fast, and because we also catch up the opportunities in India, because the mobile is the dominant device to access internet, and the second thing is I say that we have the tool or platform for all the players, because free exchange is some attraction business model for most of the the players in the mobile industry. So yeah, that's.
So of that 30 million, I think about 40, 45, 50% would be India.
And just to add to that Devnagari question that you were putting up, there are a bunch of companies and a couple coming out of Israel who have a very good, keyboard solution for Devnagari and maybe around 12, 13 Indian languages. So they are working very hard with the OEM brands to actually incorporate that Devnagari keyboard there. So maybe you could work with them. The second thing that they are doing very successfully is that they have put this into the Akash tablet. Whatever we may say about the Akash tablet, but the specifications are real, right? So those specifications involve the inclusion of a Devnagari or multilingual keyboard into the tablet or into the device itself. So that will probably benefit you whenever that will happen.
Just to make a point on this issue of language and stuff, about the language issue. No, but I still think if you look at some of the services that are localized, like Zomato or Burp or whatever, these are pretty good and well-used services, and there's a market for those. But I don't disagree that in the long run, it's an important point.
Just to add another number to that, I love numbers, I'll add one on this one as well, which is that if you look at vernacular media, print media, digital, TV and all, 3 years ago, it was 91% of readership in the market. Yet it garnered 20% of advertising rupees. Right? Today the number is, English is still only 9% of readership, but English only gets 40% of the rupees now. So it's doubled to the vernacular side. And growth, when you look at print media, and the rest of the world, developed markets, print is crashing, and but here, English media has stagnated, and it's sort of slowly trending downwards in terms of readership. Vernacular is exploding. The other thing to think about there is brands that want to advertise. Traditionally didn't want to advertise to local language audiences. They're coming there now, and you also see a whole set of brands that we would never have heard of in Delhi, that are the serfs of, Madhya Pradesh, or the, whatever other, the Samsung or somewhere else. Those brands want to have money to spend now, because that consumer has come online and is spending.
You might argue that the decline in English language print media is because it's been swapped to web consumption, but that's a separate point.
That again goes to design is not the web. Do you have any more questions? You got the first, you got the last.
Jonathan, tell us more about your 70-30 in favor of developer payments on Vodafone. Is it that we can publish an app on Google Play and then use your Vodafone payments mechanism to do in-app purchases and all? Tell us.
Certainly not in the case of Google yet, because Google as soon as Google have checkout or whatever it's called legally in India, then that will be the case. But today that is not possible. But both us and Google want that to be the case, absolutely.
But if we want in-app purchases, then what is the use case in which you are currently
in-app, right? So then the use case is through GetJar and the many other, including Price and the many other distribution points that are not Google Play. But you can, and I need to find out the technical answer to that question. In theory, you should be able to create an app with in-app purchase after the point of purchase that we can then link out to your billing. So the answer probably is yes, but I need to check.
So you can do it right now, but in the PNC of Google Play, it's not allowed. But right now they are not enforcing it. If you're not, in the terms and conditions, you cannot have any form of purchase happening in app by any other means other than Google Checkout. But if you do deploy it today, it's not that they're going out aggressively after that segment in markets where they don't have Google Checkout properly done for developers. So you could technically do that today, but you could be removed off the Android marketplace.
Operators, what would you estimate as how long it will take for these guys to follow you on the 70/30? Because as an app developer, right, it's sort of it's hard to just say, okay, we'll do all these amazing in-app purchases or transactions, but just for Vodafone users. And we want to do it for all your users.
So, in any other market, I'd say that might be an issue. In India, 160 million customers, and it's not that bad, right? So, but I do think that they will follow. It's inevitable. The question is when, and the answer is actually when they read the notes from this, and I say, which is why I said it, that we're at a significant revenue stream already, that's when they'll follow.
Their models are not working, their own app stores are not working out for them. They recognize the reason for that is why should the developer develop anything for them anyway? At that kind of price point, he would not be there. He would be in Google App Store or somewhere else. So I think that there's only a point which is very soon and very close, and Vodafone has taken a good lead in that. I don't think it's a fair amount of time before that happens, and sooner or later. But I particularly like Jonathan's view on trying to learn from experience and say, hey, we did that elsewhere, it didn't work for us. Let's try and hang on to the functionality apps right now, so that when the guys go into an Android model, at least we have some of those guys with us, if not all.